Is the PS5 Pro real? Is anything real? Are we in a simulation? We'll get the answer to hopefully one of those questions on today's episode of Gaming Insight. Let's go. Hello and welcome to Gaming Insight. It's with me, Steve Saylor, the weekly podcast where I and a special guest talk about the biggest gaming news of the week for about 30-ish minutes. Today's special guest is content creator and a fellow gaming podcast co-host, Caboose. Hey, what's up, bud? How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Happy to be on the podcast with you. Like you said, we usually run the podcast together on the gaming podcast, but I'm happy to be here with you, man.
Heck yeah. I'm glad we were finally able to make this happen. I was like, I've been itching to have some of our co-hosts on for the show. We've already had Steve on for where we did a Rise the Ronin preview. And nice. So I'm gonna make the rounds and we're going to get everyone in here for the show. So let's
through them all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. So before we get into this week's story, I want to let folks know that if you would like this, if you like this show and like to be able to support me and what I do, you can be able to go to patreon.com/Steve Saylor, where paid members get this podcast a day early and also a daily morning podcast with me where I talk about the daily gaming news and accessibility news and so much more. All right. So, Aaron, we've got a story this week. That, by the way, we're recording this before I go over to PAX. So if there is any big, huge news that's happening between PAX like today, and then, I just couldn't cover it. So I'm recording this before PAX. But so far, the biggest news of the week has been this rumored PS5 Pro. I won't get into the nitty gritty of everything that's sort of been announced as far as like with the details, but there seems to be a lot of tech specs that are being thrown around, including what actually just like an hour before we started recording this, a report supposedly documentation has been seen by Digital Foundry that kind of makes it seem as if like this might actually happen, and it might actually happen this year. Quick details. Basically, it looks like it's about 45% better graphics. Not going to be the best, processor upgrade, but that's kind of the main sort of thing. And then there's also an equivalent to, the DLSS kind of upgrade. There's like a new thing called PSSR that supposedly will be able to let games that are not able to be upgraded from like say 1080p to 4K resolution with this PSSR essentially could mean that more games that are like could be backwards compatible could be like easily updated and playable in 4K. So it basically, it can increase the resolution for those older games, which is something that a lot of games couldn't be able to do specifically on the PS4. But Aaron, I want to ask you, do we need a PS5 Pro, or would you want a PS5 Pro if this is kind of like the upgrade that supposedly we're going to be getting if we get this at the end of the year?
It sounds like it's one of those things where when you put like the side-by-side comparison of somebody in a weight loss program and the after is them just with better posture. That's
a good way to put it.
At the end of the day, it is an upgrade for sure, but a very, very minor one, it sounds. Although, 45% better like visuals sounds like an interesting draw for me. I think, whether we need it or not, at the end of the day, it's not bad for the consumer out there that doesn't have a PS5 yet at all, because this will now be the ultimate version of it, right?
Sure.
Before we end up leaping into the next generation. And also, like, who knows, maybe this could lead to like a price drop in the last versions or the previous versions. Like, we thought the PS5 Pro had already come out with the removable disk drive.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people, maybe that's going to be kind of the PS5 that they go for now that an actual PS5 Pro hits the shelves. I'm just interested to see like what the overall specs are going to be. I think this is good for the people who are into the sort of tech and want to see these games push the limits. I'm definitely intrigued to see, games like Ghost of Tsushima or now that we have The Last of Us 2 on PS5, what those games are going to look like when you're really cranking it to the max.
Sure.
But outside of that, like, of course, like there isn't like a huge draw for this, I don't think, especially this late in the console's life cycle.
Yeah, that was the thing too that I was kind of wondering, because it seems as if we're on a shortened life cycle, only because the PS5 came out during the pandemic, so and there was about a year or two that it was very hard to be able to get your hands on a PS5.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of folks, like including myself, it's kind of seems like that it's too quick of a turnaround to go from just a regular PS5 to the PS5 Pro. It seems as if like once Sony was able to get more PS5s on store shelves, or at least on digital store shelves, so people could be able to buy it. It seemed as if like almost every year there was a new upgrade to the PS5. We had the PS5 Slim last year, which, as you said, people were sort of speculating that it was going to be the PS5 Pro, and then now we're looking into potentially having a PS5 Pro come the winter. Yeah. But then I looked it up and I was like, is this too soon? And then I looked at the timeline of the PS4. And it was only 3 years in between the launch of the PS4 to when we got the PS4 Pro. Mm-hmm. So it's not like it's out of PlayStation's playbook that it's like, we're getting an accelerated timeline. I'm just wondering, though, that the PS5 to me seems like it's a pretty decent console as is.
Yeah.
Sure, with the 45% increase in graphics, I think probably the only thing for me would be if they can guarantee that games could be at 60 frames per second and up, that's worth an upgrade for me. 100,000%.
Yeah.
But anything beyond that, is it really worth an upgrade to even just I still have the launch PS5 and it still works perfectly fine for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think as well too, we talk about visuals as 45% graphical bump. As cool as that will be, at a certain point, it's just like it's impossible to be able to tell the difference. And I think what it really comes down to, the nitty gritty, is like what you said. What we really want more than anything is for our games to be running at 60 FPS or even higher than that. And Gotham Knights really took the front end of the damage, where soon after people started to realize we actually just aren't quite there yet with this console generation. I mean, A Plague Tale ended up not being 60 FPS. Starfield ended up not being 60 FPS. A lot of games have come out in this console, like in this generation, where we saw that they weren't able to reach that potential. And it's just because, the hardware is still great, the tech is still great, but man, it's not perfect. It's no PC. You don't got no 4090s in there. Yeah. And so, if that's sort of the thing that we can start seeing more of with this PlayStation Pro, if we can start seeing, who knows, maybe Gotham Knights gets a 60 FPS update or whatever it may be, right? That could be awesome. That could be definitely a huge step in the right direction. And that would lead me more towards wanting more so than it would just be like, oh, I kind of want it because I want the tech. But more than that, I'd now be like, oh, yeah, I think I need this. If I can get all my games to be running at 60 and above, I'm going to have to get this.
Yeah, and I think so too. It would be great to obviously, be able to play these games at a higher frame rate for sure. And the fact that if it looks like it's going to be, backwards compatible for a lot of games that
be nice.
that hadn't been able to be playable on the PS5, or at least, playable at its fullest extent. I think this is the difference between, for me, when I'm looking at this life cycle of the PS5 versus, say, the PS4, is that essentially we're kind of getting always it was the games that were trying to be able to outpace the hardware. It was always that the games was the limitation for games on consoles was the hardware. You couldn't be able to get past whatever was in the console box, and they were really stretching out what the capabilities of those console box could. That's why a lot of people sort of flocked over to PCs, because you could just keep constantly upgrading that, and you're always, on top of whatever the latest games.
Yep.
This time around, it seems as if the technology in these consoles are better than we've ever had them before, and the games can't keep up with the technology, because now where people are looking at 60 frames, some of them are expecting 120 frames per second, which to me would be cool, but that's I think anything above 60 is honestly kind of overkill, but that's just me.
Yeah.
But hey, you're definitely the my go-to person for superhero games. Like, you've played them all.
Yeah.
We have like probably some of the best superhero and games that are out there. We've also had some of the worst superhero games out there the past few years.
Yeah.
Would you like if you're gonna jump into Spider-Man 2 on this PS5 Pro, what do you want to see happen in this game that already, by all intents and purposes, is almost like a perfect showcase for what the PS5 Pro or the PS5 can actually do?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? Because like you said, like Spider-Man 2 is definitely, it's like the creme de la creme right now for this console generation. At least for me, in terms of really pushing the limits of what these consoles are capable of. But if there was like one thing that I wish I could see, even though this is not even like, it's not like a demand, this is more of just like, hey, yeah, it'd be cool if that was the case, is that, like in the game, you still have the option to go into a fidelity mode or a performance mode. They still try to reach 60 in, actually, I don't even know if they reach 60 in fidelity. I think it's around 45.
Okay.
But it would be nice. I mean, it would be amazing if we can get fidelity mode with the ray tracing and have the game pretty much looking its absolute best, and also having it run at a buttery smooth 60 FPS. That would be like, this is it. This is the peak of gaming for me right now. I would be an incredibly happy man. But I mean, I play the game on performance mode. I'm still very, very happy with the way that it looks. I've never noticed, like, I've never played through the game and I've been like, oh, I don't think this looks very good. Like, I always thought that it was a great looking game. And just playing Spider-Man at 60 FPS was always the dream since the 2018 game had come out on the PS4. So yeah, it's like, again, it's not like a demand, it's not like a we need this, but it would be cool if this console, the PlayStation 5 Pro, were to be capable of doing that.
If we do get these supposedly rumored specs of the PS5 Pro, like, do you think, like, what do you think could essentially be added to, say, like Spider-Man 2 that could take advantage of that? Like, other than, like, is it like, we're finally going to get like 120 frames per second, or are we going to get faster like load times? I mean, how fast can you get when you're already switching between like both Spider-Man at the same, like from Peter to Miles, and within like a second or two? It's just insane how fast that game is.
Have you messed around with the time of day change?
No, I haven't yet. I have to update download it, but I haven't started it yet.
It's crazy because it's literally instantaneous. You hit the pause menu, you change the time of day. Once you get out of the pause menu, it is that changed time of day. Like, there's no like checkpoint load. There's no like, oh, give us a sec, let's render it all. It's like, exit the pause menu, it's now night or sunset or whatever you want it to be. Wow. So I mean, in that respect, like, I don't even know, like, maybe like you said, like 120 FPS, but I totally agree with you. I just want it to get to 60. Like, I'm cool with 60. If it goes above that, fine. But yeah, like, it is overkill, like, I don't need my games running at 200 FPS. I think the only kind of games that you would maybe want that for, and this is like for a very niche audience, is like competitive games, like a first-person shooter, third-person shooter, or maybe even like fighting games. You would want it to be running like as smooth as possible, just for the competitive nature of it all. But for like a story game, just get me to 60 and I'm good. As long as it looks beautiful and it can run at 60, I'm happy.
Yeah. So actually, I do want to sort of jump into that, because you mentioned fighting games, but I did have just one idea that I think would be amazing if Insomniac was able to do it with this to kind of showcase the PS5 Pro. Imagine if we get a mode that makes it look like Into the Spider-Verse.
Yes, a visual filter on the city that's Into the Spider-Verse style. That in Fantasy World, in Dreamland, we get that in the future, I would be so happy.
I would be the PS5 Pro's like salesperson just because of that alone. Because I remember like when I was selling people on like whether or not to build, like, people to be able to buy the PS5 when it came out, and I would show people like, jumping from like subway to subway in Spider-Man or Miles Morales specifically, and it was with like 3 seconds, I think it was
so
the kind of total time, and it was so cool. But if they are able to create an Into the Spider-Verse like filter, okay, and it's smooth like butter, and like the only way Insomniac can, that'd be great. But let's jump into like where a frame rate would actually be a much more benefit, and that would be in fighting games. Like, you're obviously like big proponent for fighting games like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. where do you see, like, what would you like to be able to see a PS5 Pro version of MK1 or SF6?
For MK1, I think specifically, as far as I'm aware, some people might correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't even know if it runs at 60 on console right now.
Oh, no way.
And yeah, so like I know as well for MK11 towards the end of that game's life cycle, a lot of people were just switching over and playing it on PC because the servers were stable enough for people to be able to have a good time and matchmake with a good amount of people. And then they were allowed to play it at 60 FPS, which really helped in terms of your ability not to drop combos. Like, granted, at the end of the day, if you're playing online, the most important thing above all else is a good net code. You got to make sure the connection is good. You got to make sure that it's not choppy in that aspect. But number two is if the performance of the game is up there as well, right? Like, if we can get 60 FPS on console for Mortal Kombat 1, that would be huge. That would be awesome. The only thing, though, that would definitely hold it back is I don't know if they'd want parity across all versions of the PS5, because then do you offer potentially an unfair advantage to people who are playing the game on PS5 Pro versus people who are playing it on just the base PS5?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the same thing that Fortnite kind of went into when they were coming up with the Switch version of Fortnite, and they it's kind of famously known that when you go into that version, you're essentially playing with the mobile players instead of those on its console or PC counterparts, obviously because of the limitations in hardware. So I could definitely see, yeah, you're right. Like, if it was a higher end version of the PS5, you're right. I don't think that you would only be able to play with PlayStation like users essentially, and you wouldn't be able to play like cross plays in that sense. I think that probably maybe the technical limitations for that. But yeah, so the rumor is obviously that the PS5 Pro is going to be coming out supposedly the end of this year, leading into the holidays. We don't know what PlayStation's like goal or year is going to look like for 2024. What are your thoughts on a sort of a very like lackluster PlayStation? Is it that, we had our lackluster year with Xbox and we're now getting into our lackluster year of PlayStation? Or do you think they're like, are they holding on to games that are not ready? Are they delayed? What are your thoughts on PlayStation going into, I mean, as we're still into the beginning of their fiscal 2024?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of people undervalue how big of an impact COVID did have, especially for this console generation. Insomniac has pretty much been
they carried the PlayStation this generation 1000%.
It's been tough. It's definitely been lacking. There have been a lot of exclusives that we would have hoped to have seen exclusive to the PlayStation 5. I mean, Ragnarok was on PS4. Horizon 2 was on PS4. These are games that we expected were going to be massive console sellers, but I feel like even going into it, they were like, oh shoot, like I don't know if we can do this considering the shortage of PS5s, but also, I mean, game development is a long process. I'd imagine that the idea of a PS4 version was always in the cards. It's interesting. This has been a tough console generation for sure. It's been a little lackluster on both sides. You could argue, obviously, the PlayStation has still put out some heavy hitters, but have they put out a lot of heavy hitters that have been just for the PS5? They've put out a bunch of big exclusives, but some of which were available on the PlayStation 4 as well. And it's tough. I mean, okay, we're going to go into the holiday season now. We're going to get this new console. Could there be something that's coming with it? Spider-Man 2 DLC, baby, fingers crossed. That would be awesome. But then again, if we get that just continues to cement that Insomniac, man, they
own this generation.
They just took the whole console generation, carried it on their back.
Yeah, it's one of those things, because they've obviously had a very big beginning of the year with the release of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth,
right?
But then again, that's not necessarily a PlayStation first party title. That is a third party, but it is exclusive to PlayStation. But they're not able to get obviously as much money as if it was a first party game. But then you have a game like Helldivers 2, which took everyone by surprise and became a massive hit for them. And they've got, I think it was a Stellar Blade still to come, and I think there may be like one or two others. I'm blanking on the top of my head right now, but it's going to be interesting coming into June whether or not are they going to have a showcase that basically say, here's what the rest of the year is going to be like. And would this be a time to talk about the PS5 Pro at this point? I would hope so, if they're coming out in the holidays.
Yeah.
But yeah, or like you said, a Spider-Man 2 DLC, which would be very interesting. But like you said, I think it just basically just means that they relied on Insomniac for this one. And I honestly, with everything that had happened with Insomniac, and obviously the hack and everything that happened, and all the games that essentially were supposedly talked about, I hope they get a break. Please,
so
maybe
too.
the PS6, let them just cook for a while, let them figure it out.
I hope, honestly, more than anything, is that if they're not taking a break, I hope that it's because they genuinely love what they're doing. They're extremely passionate for these projects, and they're just as excited as the fans are to receive them. I hope they're just as hyped to get to work on inevitably Spider-Man 3. I hope they're just as hyped to get Wolverine out the door and whatever could hold in the future for Insomniac Games, because I mean, they're even minus the hacks, minus the leaks. If we go back to that showcase from 2021 when they announced Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine, I was like, these guys are busy, man. They haven't missed a beat since 2018. It's been like 5 AAA titles that they've released, and it's been back to back to back to back bangers. I mean, Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Spider-Man 2, even Spider-Man Remastered dropped for the PS5 alongside Miles Morales. All of these games extremely well received. It's insane to me, the level of quality that they produce.
And it makes you kind of wonder, like, what are the other first party studios doing if they're able to take this, the technology, because they've literally been the showcase of what the hardware of what PS5 can do. The fact that you have Miles Morales obviously showcasing the load speeds of alone,
Rift
and then you got
with the portals, the multiverse stuff.
Yeah, and then of course you had Ratchet and Clank being able to literally jump worlds through within an instant. Like, they really did showcase it, and that's why I was thinking, like, one of the reasons why do we even need a PS5 Pro?
I know,
with those kind of games that are capable, I mean, do we really need anything more than that? Like, I'm okay if maybe there's a refresh of the PS5 down the line, maybe a little bit slimmer, but it's still just as powerful, if not more so. I don't know. If the PS5 Pro can, if that would have to literally take us all the way into the PS6, because if it isn't, and they try to come up with another version, then we're kind of like, look, you kind of start to think, what is PlayStation doing with their hardware? Or like, why do they have so many projects or a lot of these things on the go? And segueing into that, there was a story obviously this week that they've stopped production on PSVR 2 headsets, and I can understand why. I want to hear your thoughts in a minute, but I want like the two reasons why I personally think that the sales have not been great for the PSVR 2. And here's the thing: this is coming from someone, I have one. Thankfully, thank you, PlayStation, for sending me one to review. It was great. I love it. It's one of my favorite headsets to use. I like it even more than my Oculus or Meta Quest 2. And yes, there is that long cable, but I'm okay with it. It's a much more comfortable headset for me personally. And with the rumor that it could potentially be compatible for PC soon, all more for it. That'll be my VR headset. But the two things I think the reason why it did not sell well: barely any first-party support at all, except for Gran Turismo 7 and Horizon Call of the Mountain. And also, as well, the cost involved in order to be able to get a PSVR 2. You have to own a PlayStation 5, which Canadian, you're looking at about cheapest $550, but average around $600 just for a PS5 alone. And then if you want to be able to get a PSVR 2 headset, I looked it up literally this afternoon, from either Walmart or Best Buy, you're looking at $750 just for the headset. If you want a bundle that comes with Horizon Call of the Mountain along with the headset, that's $820 from Best Buy. So even just base minimum price alone, you're looking at $1,300 just to be able to use the headset. That's not even playing any games on it yet. And that cost is a little too much for anyone to be able to want to spend for as little support as it seems that Sony has. And so I want to hear your thoughts. Do you share my same reasons, or do you have other reasons as to why it failed, or what are your thoughts on the PSVR 2 in general?
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Honestly, that is an outrageously steep price for everything just to get started with just one game, really. And granted, like, Call of the Mountain looks amazing. It's probably one of the coolest VR games I've ever seen, honestly.
And it plays well too. I actually love it. It's one of my favorite VR games.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you know what? In general, like, VR, I feel like has always had such a tough time because it's one of those things that's like impossible to market. The whole fun of VR is when you're actually playing it. Seeing a trailer for a VR game, it just doesn't do it justice. You know, like you don't really feel how cool that could be until the headset's on, until you got the controllers in your hand, right? Like, even myself, you know, one of the first times I ever experienced VR was the first PlayStation VR. I was able to do like this really cool experience for Batman Arkham. And it was, I mean, you're brought
I love
into
that
the
VR
world.
mode. It is so dang good.
It's insane. It's insane. I'll never forget that moment when you go into the Batcave. Like, I actually feel vertigo when I like play it. It's awesome. Yeah. But when you go back, if you watch like a trailer for Batman Arkham VR, if you even just watch gameplay, it looks like it's like, oh, this is like cheap.
You're just first-person Batman. Like, what is this?
What's going on here? His hands are doing this. Like, what's happening? So, you know, it's just like you can't really sell it as well in an actual trailer versus when you're actually playing it. And I think too, when you talk about a price tag of like upwards of over $1,000, what would you rather be spending that money on? The VR or a PS5 with a bunch of games or a PC, you know, like where would you, a consumer, want to put that amount of money into? And I feel like just VR, it's got an audience, but it's pretty niche right now. And so I'd understand that, you know, this is kind of the latter half of that cycle for the PlayStation VR 2.
Yeah, and it seems as if, because I remember at the time when the PSVR first came out, the first one, and I was actually recommending it to folks because it was the cheapest way to get into VR, because the headsets that were coming out were over that price, that $1,000 price tag. And
there were some big games. I mean, Iron Man, Batman Arkham, like these are some really cool, like, oh, like you would want to experience that, you know?
Exactly. And so like we had that, and then obviously, you know, the Oculus Quest or the Meta Quest came out, and actually, like, I even looked up like okay, with $1,300 to be able to get a VR 2, how is that compared to other headsets? Right now, you can get a Meta Quest 3, the latest Quest headset. You can get a bundle with that plus Asgard's Wrath 2 at Best Buy right now in Canada for $650. Literally half the price. You get one game already with it, and you don't need any other device in order to be able to use it. You can put it on, turn it on, and off you go. And that is like, and basically Meta, like when they bought Oculus, essentially, they kind of, you know, took the ball and ran with it, and now is running circles around PlayStation when it comes to their VR offerings. And because that's the majority of the library that is available on the PSVR 2 are all games that are available on the Meta Quest. So it just, it seems silly.
At that point, you know, you bring it up there, right? Like, even if you're a part of the niche audience that invests in VR and you want to play VR games, at that point, like, as a consumer, where are you spending your money? On the $1,000+ for the PSVR 2, or half that for the latest Meta Quest, and you can now spend the rest on a bunch of games that you could try out.
Yeah. So, Aaron, before I let you go, I want to thank you for coming on the show today, but I do want to ask you one question about PlayStation. We're at the end of the Jim Ryan era. As of this recording, I think he's got like 10, 11 days left. Maybe by the time this comes out, about a week left in office as CEO. If you, like, you know, obviously, like, if pie in the sky, you were given one decision that you can make for PlayStation that could potentially either turn it around or fix with anything, or, you know, do anything that you would want to be able to do to kind of improve the quality of life for PlayStation players, what would that be?
That is now I'm feeling like, oh, is this what Jim Ryan is? What he feels like every day? You know, is this what?
You know, I had a dream
CEOs are
about
like?
this once, and Reggie Fils-Aimé actually helped me out. I'm not lying. I actually had a dream where I was like, I became CEO of PlayStation, and Reggie was in the room as I was about to make that
I
announcement.
need Reggie right now. You know,
Yeah.
tell me what to do. You know what? I feel like they're already starting to do kind of what I would have wanted. You know, originally the sort of plan was Jim Ryan was there, and they wanted to really go all in. Kind of what WB Games is doing. Go all in on live service, right? Like they had in production several live service games, and now, you know, Jim Ryan's on the way out, and I think half of them have been canned, half of them have been canceled. You know, Naughty Dog put out that statement saying that they were going to have to transition to becoming a full live service studio or continue to work on the games that they love to make, these single player story driven experiences. And at the end of the day, that's what helped win PlayStation the most important console generation, right? Like the PS4, Xbox One era was like, it changed everything, you know?
Yeah.
And they won it with games like Uncharted, with games like The Last of Us. I mean, Last of Us came to PS3, but I mean, The Last of Us 2, even if you want to talk about it, Spider-Man,
Yep.
God of War, right? So these huge tentpole single player story driven experiences it's what drew so many people in to play on that console. And then from there, it was just easy. Now you have that console for those incredible single player experiences. Get your other cross-platform games that you want to play, your Call of Duties, your whatevers, right? Like a lot of those competitive first-person shooters, third-person shooters, Fortnite, obviously, big battle royale games that are available on all platforms. You get the best of both worlds. You get those competitive games, you scratch that itch, and then you also get these amazing exclusive single-player experiences. Granted, now we're in a world where a lot of these games are starting to come to PC, so if you're patient enough, just wait and play it on PC eventually. But you're gonna have to wait like a year plus sometimes, maybe even longer, right? So my advice, if I were running the show, is just let's do more of what already helped us succeed. Like we won, we're at the top, you know. I mean, okay, Nintendo, I guess, right? But like in comparison to Xbox, we're on top, right? We're number one for a lot of people in their console choice, and that was built on these amazing single player games. Do more of that. Make more Spider-Man games. You know, if we have a studio that wants to make Uncharted 5, get them to do it as long as they're passionate about it, as long as the idea is right. Does Neil Druckmann have a plan for Last of Us 3? Get the ball rolling on that. You know, we just need more of what's already worked, more of what's sold so well, and that's it. That's my advice.
I like that, and I'm just going to put a pitch out there, you know, a Caboose for CEO of PlayStation. I like that a lot.
Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen, yeah.
Let's make it happen.
Let's put the vote out there.
No
all right,
pressure.
bud. Yeah. All right, bud. Thank you so very much for joining me on the podcast this week. Where can people be able to find you on the internet if they want to give you a follow?
Yeah, if people want to check me out, Twitter and Instagram at CabooseEK. And then also I'm covering all things superhero gaming related, Marvel, Spider-Man 2, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. But also, you know, a ton. We're in a superhero gaming renaissance right now. There's so many on the way, even from EA and the works, right? You can check all that out. I'll keep you guys updated on everything regarding superhero games on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Caboose.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, sir. And I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.